Good evening. Welcome back to A Second Chance. My name is Philip Jones. Today we're going to get a wonderful, awesome, dynamic story from awesome man of God, Dr. Patrick G. Dr. G is part of the Second Chance family, and we're grateful to have him on today. Dr. G, how you doing?
I'm doing fine, and yourself?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you. So everybody know how we kind of get to this. We go straight to what we're here for. So, Dr. G, take it away. The floor is yours.
Um, well, good evening, good afternoon to everybody. My name is Dr. Patrick G. My education is in justice law and criminology. I'm the founder and chief executive hope dealer for our Advocate, which is a faith-based health and wellness organization. What we do is that we serve the undervalued, underserved, um, disenfranchised communities. We go into those communities and we promote healing, we promote wellness, we fight for health equity, as well as ensuring that everybody is up on the health literature that they need for their particular ailment. I am currently in my fourth year with a kidney transplant. My particular journey started April of 2013 when I was at a routine physician's appointment. Um, my endocrinologist was my primary care physician. She had been treating me for type 2 diabetes since 2003. On this particular visit in 2013, she told me that I was at stage 3B for chronic kidney disease. And I'll be perfectly honest, at the time when she told me that, I didn't know what chronic disease was, hadn't a clue what my kidney functions actually did. I was so concerned about my diabetes. Um, Never once did she ever tell me that diabetes was the number one leading cause for kidney disease or anything like that. So I was just truly caught off guard. So um, she referred me to a nephrologist that same month. The nephrologist was like, well, Mr. G, eventually you're probably going to go on dialysis, but there are certain protocols that you can take to kind of slow the progression. So they told me to abstain from eating chocolate, any dairy products, and nuts. So from that particular point, going all the way to November, November the 19th, 2013, to be exact, I walked into my nephrologist's office. I had, in between my physician telling me that I was at stage 3B and this particular appointment with my nephrologist, I gained about 150 pounds. I wasn't eating that much. I just didn't know I was retaining that much fluid. And I'm probably at 378 pounds. Um, I don't have any clothes to fit me except for a pair of sweatpants, white t-shirt, pair of flip-flops, pair of white socks. Um, and I'm sitting there hyperventilating, not able to, to sleep normally. Um, and my wife had to speak for me, and she asked the nephrologist, "When are you going to put my husband on dialysis?" So I had already made the decision at that time to choose peritoneal dialysis. So they scheduled me for my surgery that following week for me to get a PD catheter. And on December the 1st, 2013, I actually did my very first exchange of peritoneal dialysis. So we can cut to February um, 2016 is when I get listed for a kidney transplant. Um, May the 20th, 2016, I get a call for a kidney. Um, so I go to my transplant center, I get worked up. They came in the room, they told me that because of my size and because of the size of the kidneys, I will be getting two kidneys instead of one. I was like, wow, I must be really special. I never heard of that. So, um, about 15 to 20 minutes before surgery, the surgeon came back in and they told me that they would have to postpone surgery because one of the kidneys was good, but the other one was bad. And because of the size of the kidneys, that one kidney wouldn't be sufficient. So they told me since I was at the top of the wait list, it would probably be 3 months. Well, 3 months turned into 11 months. And this is probably more of a journey of faith and healing versus a kidney journey. Um, in 2016, March of 2016, I was up on Capitol Hill with the National Kidney Foundation at the Kidney Summit. And I was in the office of Congressman Donald McEachin. And I'll never forget, we finished a discussion. I got up and I fell. I just collapsed, feeling embarrassed. I tried to play it off, sat back down in the chair for about 15 minutes, gathered myself. I got up, we laughed about it. And as I'm walking out of his office, I collapse again. One of the things that I learned the hard way is you never, ever want to fall out or have a medical emergency in the House building on Capitol Hill because it takes an act of Congress literally to get off of Capitol Hill. So they rushed me to their kiosk, their medical kiosk, where I was observed by the nurse. At the time, they called the paramedics. I just wanted to go back to the hotel. I called my dialysis center and they told me, yeah, just get some rest for the night and just come back home to Richmond in the morning and just come straight to the dialysis center. So I did that. So when I walked into the appointment room, my nurse walked through the door crying. I don't know about a lot of you all that are currently suffering with kidney disease, but my nurse was like a drill sergeant. I mean, she was hardcore, thugged out to the bone. I had never seen this woman show any emotions, and she was crying. And I asked her what was wrong, and she was like, I hate giving bad news. So I'm like, well, unless I'm dying, I got kidney disease. I don't know how much worse it's going to get. So they told me, based on lab results, based on previous lab results that they had never shared with me before, they told me that I was suffering from hypocalcemia, which is elevated calcium levels. So I was like, okay. And then they said, well, I may be at risk for sarcoidosis, which would make me at risk for either lung cancer or bone cancer. So I was like, well, why are you telling me this now instead of, when the original lab results came out? So I had to hear this long story, this, that, and other, which really didn't make sense to me. So it was on a Friday, and they was like, well, we're sorry to give you this bad news. So they did more lab work, and I had to go home and try to explain this the best I could to my wife, um, and try to explain it in a manner for her not to be worried, but at the same time, I'm confused, don't know what's going on. I'm trying to figure out why in the world all these people are kind of evading telling me what's in my labs. So they make after a couple of weeks, I never did hear anything back. So I scheduled an appointment with my primary care physician, and she did lab work, and she was like, well, yeah, you're suffering from hypocalcemia. I'm going to make an appointment with a rheumatologist. I go to the rheumatologist on April the 20th at 3:30 p.m. I need y'all to remember that because this is how God works. I go to the rheumatologist. Rheumatologist tells me there are different types of sarcoidosis. And he says, well, really, there's no cure for sarcoidosis, but the only thing that you can do to manage it is through prednisone. And in order for you to be on prednisone, that means you need a kidney transplant. I said, cool. I go home, tell my wife everything. 11:45 p.m. the same night, I get a call for a kidney. They run the numbers by me. They ask me if I want it. I like, yeah. Ironically, I go back to the same hospital. I go to the same transplant room. I have the same nurse that I met 11 months previously. So I'm seeing all the signs that God is really showing me in this journey. This is not a coincidence. I'm like, wow. So I pass on to the surgical team everything that I was told about the sarcoidosis, this, that, and the other. So we go ahead, they do the transplant. After about 8.5 hours, I wake up and I'm rubbing my chest and I feel, something strange in my chest. I have a catheter. So my wife tells me that the kidney isn't working. So the surgeon explained to me, yeah, 10% of new transplant recipients, this is normal, but it'll kick in, within a few days. So it's nothing to worry about. We put that catheter up there so that you can go ahead and dialyze to kind of help wake your kidney up. So, okay. So they had me dialyze 24 hours a day, every other day. So 5 days after the kidney transplant, I was told that I had a blood clot in my neck and I had to have another surgery. So I was like, no. I started pulling tubes out. I'm like, no, I'm split open. This kidney isn't working. Y'all gave me a bad kidney. I don't want no more surgeries. So my wife had to come and literally talk to me. Now, understanding that at this particular time, I'm on morphine, Dilaudid, fentanyl, and Oxycontin. So I'm really am in a lot of pain, not knowing what I'm saying. But at the same time, I really don't care to hear about another surgery. So my wife told the surgeon, go ahead and schedule it. He'll be there. So that you can understand, how much I believe in the Lord. chaplains, church chaplains are of different denominations. I'm a Christian. So when they prayed, if they didn't end the prayer and in Jesus' name, I would end it. So I would tell transportation, the surgical teams, we ain't going nowhere until I end the prayer, because nobody's going to cut on me, and it's not in Jesus' name. And it's not to throw shade at anybody's religious belief, but this is my belief, my journey. So we go ahead, they knock they get rid of the blood clot. 3 days later, I find out that I am hemorrhaging. I need another surgery. Of course, my wife looked at me. She already knew what time it was. I started yanking IVs out. I'm like, nope, I couldn't even walk because I had a catheter in me. And here I'm trying to walk, can't even move my legs. So we got to go through the same thing again. Husband, I need you here. You need to chill out. Doc, go ahead and schedule surgery. So I have the third surgery. Kidney still isn't functioning. One of the interesting things is that they never close me up. So I'm still left open from the very first surgery. So 17 days later, I needed a fourth surgery so that they could create inside of me a laparoscopic peritoneum window for me to drain. And I really didn't understand that, because I'm like, you want me to drain, but my kidney isn't working. My kidney still is asleep. So they go ahead with that surgery. So I had a total of 4 surgeries, stayed in the hospital for 33 days. I went and I did 6 days of physical and occupational therapy at a rehab center. So I finally go home. So I have to wear a wound vac. Mind you, my kidney is still asleep. So it wasn't until the 47th day that the very first drop of urine came out. Now, mind you, I'm in stage 5 now. So my kidneys have completely shut down. I hadn't urinated 2.5 years prior to my transplant. So that first drop of urine, it almost took me back to childhood when my mama taught me how to potty for the first time, and I was that excited. I fell out on the floor. I started hollering. You would have thought I won the lottery. And it reminded me right at that moment of the small things that we tend to take for granted. I'll never forget, there were some times where I just wanted to give up when I was in the hospital. Times of hopelessness. I thought God had abandoned me. I cursed God. I cursed God a number of times. And then right before my 4th surgery, and this is the first time outside of my wife I'm sharing this particular dream that I had. I don't expect for most people to get it, but it was prophetic. I retired from the Virginia Department of Corrections as a major / chief security. So before I got in my last position, I spent 8.5 years working as a training captain / strike force field commander / canine coordinator. So I used to train emergency response teams. I used to train patrol dogs, drug dogs. I used to do all the hands-on shooting, everything what you see on TV. I was that guy. So I also, the prison that I worked at, we also housed death row inmates. And we used to take the death row inmates when it was maybe 3 weeks before their execution date to another facility where they held executions. During that particular time, I think I did 12 executions during my time at that particular prison. And because I lived in Richmond, Virginia, where the morgue was actually at the transplant center, my transplant center hospital. So it would be ironic for me to stay there for the entire execution, take the body, put it in the refrigerated truck, and then drive it to the morgue at the Medical College of Virginia. So I did this 12 times. And in this particular dream, again, I told you I was on a lot of pain medication. So in this particular dream, every inmate that I had taken to execution, we're at this empty football stadium, and all of these inmates are lined up. They are literally planted in the ground, just like they look like corn stalks. And I'm planted right in the middle. So I have 6 on one side, 6 on the other side, and I'm right in the middle. And of course, they are talking junk to me. Man, how can you take me to get executed, this, that, and the other? And at both ends of the football field in the end zone, there are some backhoes, a whole row of backhoes, and they just keep coming. And I'm trying to get out from the ground, but I can't, and I'm being taunted from both sides. And eventually I die. So it was interesting that when I woke up from this dream, and I mean when I literally woke up from this dream, I couldn't understand. It was about 3:30 in the morning, and I'm strapped down to the bed. I don't know why I'm strapped down. And my wife is on her knees. She's on my left hand side. She's on her knees and she's crying. So, I call her name up. My wife's name is Tina. I'm like, Tina, what's wrong? And this is the first time I can honestly say I never seen my wife look at me like she just wanted to slap the taste out of me. And she was like, do you know what you've done? I said, no, I'm just waking up. I said, but why am I strapped down to the bed? And, my wife said, well, you punched 2 doctors in the face, you choked the nurse, you did all this other stuff, and you were still out. You were still under. And I was like, how in the world did I do that if I was still under? They was like, look, they're still trying to figure it out. And it wasn't until she told me that the light bulb went off. And what this whole story told me was that I had pent up unforgiveness in my heart that I needed to release, and that I needed to be specific about my prayers. I had been praying for a kidney, but I never prayed for a working kidney. We serve a very specific God. And when we make our prayer requests, we need to be very specific.
Yes.
So I had a number of pastoral friends to come up there. I mean, people, God knows, man. I mean, it was almost like there were people praying for me that I never knew. And, it was like, you need to forgive. And in forgiveness, it doesn't mean that, well, you know what? I'm not going to mess with that person. Or you know what? I'm just going to put them out of my mind. When you deal with our Lord and Savior, you have to be very specific. Man, I started going back to when old dude threw a rock and bust me upside my head when I was in kindergarten. If I can remember the name, I was praying for forgiveness. I was asking for forgiveness. I mean, and it really started transforming me. And my pastor called me one time during this entire process, and he said something that I didn't understand at that time. He called me. I was a minister in training, and he called me and he said, "Minister," he said, "How you doing?" And I said, "Pastor, I don't know, man. I'm just up here struggling." He said, "Look, I need you to do two things for me. The Lord passed on these two things that I need for you to do." And I was like, "What's that, Pastor?" He said, "I need you to stop taking your pain medication." I said, "Say again." He said, "I need you to stop taking your pain medication." I said, "What do you mean? All of that stuff that they have you on, I need you to stop. The second thing I need you to do, I need you to respect the process." And he just hung up. So I'm looking at Tina. I'm like, "Tina, what is respecting the process?" And he wants me to stop taking this pain medication. And again, I have never been sewed up from all of my surgery. I had to heal naturally. So when the nurses came in to clean my wound, they was like, "Mr. G, did you take your Oxycontin?" I said, "Nope, my pastor told me not to take no more medication, so I'm not taking that." They thought I was crazy. They was about to admit me to the psych ward. I said, "Nope." He told me it came from God. I'm not doing it. And I didn't do it. And I was in a lot of pain, a lot of pain. But I bore that pain and what that was doing. And when my pastor was telling me that I needed to respect the process, I needed to respect the process of transformation. I needed to respect the process of healing, but it had nothing to do with my physical body. This had to do with my spiritual walk with God. So it was like, and I kept getting moved around. I was in the ICU and then moved to different floors. And I ended up in the old prison ward at this particular hospital because it was a state hospital. If the inmates needed to go to the hospital, they would bring them to the prison ward at this particular hospital where they rebuilt the prison ward. And now they used this particular unit as a holdover if there's anybody that needs a bed. And the transplant unit that I was in, all the beds had filled up while I was in surgery. I spent 2 nights in there and they never changed anything. So I'm seeing it, I'm having flashbacks of inmates that I would bring in this particular room. And I'm like, wow. I said, "God, you a beast. You really taking me through something." I was sitting there, I was like, "Oh my God." So when I finally, after going through all of this, I mean, it was like everywhere I went, I prayed for everybody, whether they was a believer or not. I'm praying for the janitorial crew. I'm praying for people walking by. I'm praying for the pictures on the wall. When I tell you, Mr. Jones, I was praying for everybody. I'm praying for everybody. I look out the window and see cars go up and down the street. I'm praying for safe travels and mercies because now the light has gone off and I'm understanding not only the process, but I'm understanding the calling that God has on my life. So once I get home, well, on my way home after I'm released from the hospital, they told me, I couldn't drive. Make sure I'm not around a whole bunch of people, the first 6 weeks, especially being open and I'm wearing a wound bag. But I told my wife I need to go to church. Man, that was probably one of the biggest arguments we've ever had in our 500 years of marriage. I said, "Look, you don't know what the Lord told me. I just need to go in." And I happened to get out on a Tuesday, which is when we do Bible study. So she reluctantly drove to the church and nobody knew I was coming. Nobody knew I was coming. I just wanted to go in, shout out to the people that was there, tell them thank you, and just leave on out. And I got out the car and I walked in, and everybody stood up and they started clapping. It was extremely emotional um, to be back home with my church family. So I said um, what I said because my wife was like, come on, let's do what the doctor said." And I went back. So again, on that 47th day, when I was laying in the floor, and my wife thought that I fell off the toilet, I didn't fall off the toilet. I am celebrating um, urinating because 2.5 years prior to this, I felt like I was inadequate. I felt like I was less of a man. I could defecate, I couldn't urinate, and going to church and not being able to have a good reason to go to the bathroom for 2.5 years prior to that. You know, um, it was really interesting. So as my creatinine level dropped and my kidney started functioning, uh, I'm good money now. My labs are looking good. And then one of the nurses said, she was like, "Well, Mr. G, your kidney function as well." She said, "But you're still too fat. You need to lose weight." So I signed up to go through a weight loss program, um, also at this hospital. So when I talked to the nutritionalist, and at that particular time, I was on 2 forms of insulin, as well as a number of medications for hypertension and stuff like that. She said, "Well, when you start this new lifestyle, because we're not going to call it diet, when you start this new lifestyle, you're going to stop taking your insulin." So I thought the woman was crazy. I'm like, "Man, I've been on this for 10 years. There's no way in the world you're going to take me off of this." Here again, I wasn't listening to God. The day I started the diet, or the lifestyle, which was February the 18th, 2018, um, was the last time that I've ever taken insulin for my diabetes. Um, Within a year, I had dropped like 100 pounds. I was feeling good. I was doing good. Labs were extraordinary. Hadn't had any issues until March 2020. Actually, to be specific, March the 30th, 2020, when I tested positive for COVID. Um, again, back in the hospital for observation. To make a long story short, I'm not only a COVID survivor, but a COVID long haul. I dealt with the side effects. At that particular time, in the early stages of COVID, the only protocol for people with kidney transplant was a medication that our last president was touting called hydroxychloroquine. There were 2 particular studies that came out where they administered this particular medication to kidney transplant recipients that were COVID positive in Seattle, Washington, and again in New York. So my my transplant nephrologist was like, "This is the only thing that we have since you are immunocompromised." So I took it. Um, it was a 7-day prescription. And at the end of the 7 days, I felt better, but the side effects kicked in. And that's how I ended up in the hospital for a couple of days. And um, I stayed. It took me 291 days to get over the side effects of hydroxychloroquine. So that didn't occur until June the 5th of this year. And I still have um, some challenges from that, but by the grace of God, I'm getting through that. So, as I bring my journey to a close, I just want to say that, um, Mr. Jones, the importance of your platform, and I'm pretty sure you know this, is not only to inform and to educate, but to send a clear message that kidney disease is not a joke. And there are a lot of peers, advocates, care partner, caregivers, whether individually or that may have a platform like you, or that may be in various kidney organizations that are shouting this from the rooftops. But kidney disease is not sexy. And a lot of times people don't want to hear it. And I'm currently in the midst of that right now, because a couple of weeks ago, my son ended up having to do emergency dialysis, and now he is on dialysis in stage 4 kidney disease. Um, I was first person in my family with kidney disease, so but I wasn't the first person in my family with diabetes. Diabetes ran on both sides. But as a parent, you never want your child to go through what you went through. And my son is 25 years old. He has the rest of his life in front of him, but he is currently going through some similar challenges. So I just wanted to put that out there for your audience. Uh, you can certainly teach, preach, coach, mentor people, but a lot of times people aren't going to be receptive to what you have to say until it hits home. And I just hope that the folks that are watching this, and maybe the people that will watch the replay, will understand, if we are more proactive in our health than reactive, sometimes we can certainly avoid these pitfalls. And I wish I would have known that, but now, since I've been given, no pun intended, a second chance or another chance, I'm very grateful to now be able to use my story to minister to people with chronic illnesses, and to kind of, a lot of people talk about wanting to meet people where they are. I'm able to literally meet people where they're at and stay with them until they recover. So I just want to thank you for allowing me to share, and I apologize for being long-winded, but thank you very much, man. I truly appreciate it.
Oh, it's no problem at all. And take the time that you need. That's why I did come up with this show, for people like you to be able to tell their story in entirety, because us as transplant patients, or people who aren't necessarily even there yet, need to hear those whole stories. People ask us to speak in certain places, and they give us a time limit. You have 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and for people who have powerful or long story, just in general, it's not going to come out in 15 minutes. I'm 31. I've been dealing with chronic kidney disease since I was 4, so I know my story's not going to be 15 minutes.
Exactly.
So I'll get to my question. We're going to go to a commercial, and I definitely have some questions that I want to ask you. We'll get to those when we come back.
All right. Thank you.
Welcome back to a second chance. I'm here with Dr. Patrick G. So my first question, I'm touching on something that you just kind of mentioned. Your son. I'm sorry that you have to go through things like you said. I'm sure no parent wants to watch their child suffer or have to go through anything like dialysis or kidney failure, any type of organ failure. Um, but let me ask you this question: going back to a statement that you made. Um, of your pastor and the process. Do you think the process that uh, you went through it to be able to help him get through his?
I I think I had to. The process was to be cleansed
Mm,
of um, any unforgiveness or hardness of heart that I had, but I think it prepared me for ministry because at this time I wasn't licensed, so it was like me having to go through the fire to be purified, to be sanctified, in order to be able to come out and not for anything to be about me, but for the Lord. So for me to learn what it means to be a servant, not the like Jesus. Jesus didn't come to be served, but he came to serve. So it just afforded me the opportunity um, to not just talk the talk, but to actually walk the walk with people that are suffering and that are afflicted. Psychologists Carl Jung would refer to this as being a wounded healer. That where you can meet people in the midst of their afflictions and you don't think about what you're going through, but you lament and you support the other person that's healing. And from that, you can get healed yourself. So I think I had to tolerate everything that I went through as a process of being sanctified and the kind of to be set up to understand what it means to really suffer and what it means to be really healed. Um, because there's only two types of healing. Either you get healed here or you get healed on the other side. So while I'm still here, the Bible talks about, when Jesus never said that we wouldn't suffer, that we wouldn't be broken, that we wouldn't be downtrodden, but it's how you rejoice in the midst of your suffering. So that's what I had to learn to do. I had to learn to stand on the strength of my faith um, by allowing other people to pour into me and to actually speak life into myself before I can actually try to speak life into somebody else, especially somebody that doesn't know me from Adam. So, that's what my pastor meant by that process. I had to understand the intricate details to what healing is. Healing isn't just for the flesh. I had to heal my spirituality, my mentality, my um, emotional. It was just a whole gamut that I had to tolerate.
got you. I'm a big person when it comes to support families because I understand how important they are and the role that they play, in our lives as uh, not just necessarily transplant patients, but people dealing with life-threatening illnesses in general. Because we can't make it through this without their help. No matter who it is, the age or anything like that. So, um, what were like the conversations and thoughts kind of that you've had with your son, with your wife, when as you were going through this? Because you know, I'm kind of on the side that he's on at this point. My stepmom was just diagnosed with breast cancer, so to have to sit there and kind of watch her go through that process, it's difficult for me, even though I've been through my own journey. my own situation, you still don't want to see your loved ones go through those things, regardless that you've been through them or not. So, um, how did they deal with that while you were going through your situation? Because it was, uh, it was a short time, also, and a long time as well. So, with them having to deal with it basically as long as you did, because they're there by your side, how did they take that?
Well, again, nobody wants to see their parents suffering, especially when they don't understand it. My kids were probably conflicted. I have a daughter that's a nurse, and she is dealing with lupus nephritis. You know, so she understood.
Hmm.
It didn't bother her. She would be very encouraging. My sons, on the other hand, men process things differently. Um, and sometimes, as a man, when you are trying to understand exactly what's going on and you're not able to understand it, even if it's being told to you, you kind of want to shut it out.
Hmm.
So it was a little bit of that. Also wondering, man, I'm looking at this. Is this going to happen to me when I get, pop's age and this, that, and the other? My wife had to learn on the fly. And God bless my wife, man, because she was my rock, man. I mean, shout out to Tina because the entire time I stayed in the hospital, she never left. She went home to get more clothes. She might went home, to pick up a few things. She never left. She stayed. She slept in that upright chair for the entire 33 days I was in the hospital. Even though I would fuss and say, go home, get some rest, she totally ignored me like a normal wife would. she, yeah, right. Uh, but she was there. I mean, she was my backbone. She was taking notes. She was holding the medical staff accountable. Nurses would run up to her, Miss G, when did I give your husband his dose of medication? And she would, tell him you came in at this time and gave him this, that, and the other. So it was good that she was right there. My church family, oh Jesus, man, if they wasn't coming up there, they was calling. They would come up and pray. There was even this situation. I had just gotten out of a surgery, and they came to visit. And the one of the nurses that was treating me, wanted to know about our church and this, that, and the other. So as my pastor was telling her, they saw that I was falling, in and out of sleep, snoring and stuff. So they was like, minister, go ahead and pray us out. And I'm asleep, man. I was obedient. I prayed in my sleep. Couldn't tell you to this day what I prayed. My wife said, you preached the prayer. I said, I can't remember what I prayed. Even the nurse came back in. Wow, Mr. G, I don't know how you did that because you was like, thank God. What I did. Oh man, but hey, I did it, man, because it wasn't me, man. It was the Holy Spirit in me, man. So even in the midst of trials, man, you got to learn to be obedient, So um it, and I had to learn a valuable lesson also, you know, um, sometimes as men or as what we want to call independent people, we don't know how to accept help. And that was another lesson. When you are always the one that's independent and doing for others, and you get down, and when somebody extends an arm and you don't know how to receive that, man, that was a humbling experience. And when I had to depend on my wife, that was humbling. And And but I got to say, she was relentless. She wouldn't let me do nothing. I mean, she was just hands on, and man, it was just a blessing. So there were so many lessons um, in my particular journey, but that being able to accept help, especially when you're the one always rendering the help, that's a humbling experience. I mean, that in itself, um, it just kind of shut me up, man. I just, like my pastor said, I had to respect the process.
Right, right, definitely. You brought up your church family. It's kind of a small part of my story that's equivalent to yours as well. Um, my church family is actually my actual family. My The church that I currently attend was started by my uncle, who was our pastor emeritus. Now run by his um, sons, I should say. And they, continuously they're praying for me as well. Like you said, they weren't able to come see me. They would, call me and,
Mhm.
pray for me and things like that. I remember when I had my brain surgery right after I'd gotten sick again, 2010. And they were right there, praying for me. Came and saw me while I was in the hospital and stuff. And I think that's an important part uh, for a lot of people's lives, is the fact that their church family took that time, to be who they were called to be and go and, pray for people, whether it's the sick and shut in, the homeless, whatever the case may be. So it's great to see that you definitely had your church family there by you while you went through your situation. So um, this question is for something that was told earlier in the story. You mentioned that you had gained weight, but didn't realize that it was, mostly fluid. Um, was when you found that out, was that something, was that before, after you started more or less learning about the kidney disease? I remember you saying you didn't really know what it was about, or transplant, life and stuff like that. So, um, if you did know these things ahead of time, do you think it would have made a difference?
Oh, no doubt. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I didn't learn about that until after I got on dialysis because my first month on dialysis, I lost 57 pounds of fluid. So it wasn't, I had a pretty good dialysis facility where I dialyzed at. But it wasn't until I joined the ESRD network, and that's where I got my greatest education. When when you are amongst other dialysis patients or kidney patients, and they're sharing their experiences, and you're listening, and you don't know how to advocate for yourself, and they are telling you, their tips, giving you suggestions and stuff like that. It just kind of emboldened me to want to learn more. Um, know what kind of questions I needed to ask my doctors, because a lot of times they were very forthcoming with information. So I had to um, develop a list every time I went to the doctor of these particular questions that I really wanted to know. So yeah, that's when I found out that my kidney was really failing and I wasn't able to urinate
Mhm.
as much. So that's why I was retaining all that fluid. So yeah.
That's the urine thing is definitely have to be an issue. I know a lot of people have had to deal with that as well. Um, you brought up having to do 24-hour dialysis every other day. Like, how was that experience of having to do that? Because I hate doing this every night. Period. When I'm on my PD machine, so
Yeah.
I know, just having to do 24 hours is got, even though it's every other day, it's got to be hectic. I'm not even doing. I'm probably doing maybe a third of that or less. So, like I said, I hate getting on this thing every night. I mean, I'm glad I have it.
Yeah,
I'm glad that the resources of these things are there to help us continuously, live our life and keep going. But like, how was that experience of having to be on that literally a full 24 hours?
yeah. Well, I couldn't go nowhere. I couldn't walk. My right leg was the size of both of my legs put together. So, but they ran the machine slower than nocturnal. So I really didn't feel much. Um, and if I needed, to go to the bathroom for bowel movement or anything, the cord was long enough. But it was just odd because I didn't know that you could literally do 24 hours of dialysis. But they brought the machine to my room and they explained it to me. So it was more of a mental thing than physical. Mentally, knowing that I'm doing dialysis for this long and my kidney isn't working, it was just really playing tricks on my mind and stuff. So again, that was a part of that respecting the process. What are you really going to do in adverse situations? And I wouldn't want anybody to go through what I went through. And I'm pretty sure there's some people that have gone through more tumultuous stuff, but for me, that was bottom of the barrel type stuff. So I wouldn't want nobody to go through anything like that.
Definitely. The one more thing you brought up earlier, you said it made me laugh because I'm like, I don't know if I would have been able to do this one, but when he said to stop taking your pain medication, I know that's like, that's like telling you, stop eating. Like, hey man, you ain't got to eat. You good. Last for 2-3 weeks without eating. You all right. When you're in that situation, because the pain is so unbearable sometimes, depending on how you were cut, where you were cut, the depth of the cut, things like that. I mean, I got lucky when I had my transplant that I didn't have that much pain or a wide area of pain. I cut right here, right above my waist area, where they placed my kidney at. But really, I had a depth amount of pain, but not a length, like a width wise. It was more of like in one specific spot, but it went down real far. So for me, it was good because I didn't need to take so much.
Mm-hmm.
But just even though I know that if I wouldn't have been able to get what I did, take, I would have been like, man, we got a problem because this pain is not working for me. So I know what you sitting there, like you said, you had to heal with open cuts and to stop taking those medications that's what they're there for. Definitely had to make you feel like, sometimes where, it was like just difficult to keep pushing, even though you knew your purpose of why you did it.
Mm-hmm.
The fight, that's what makes your fight that much stronger, is the fact that you were able to do it and go through with your pastor told you to do. Because like I said, I know some God-fearing people that still wouldn't have did it. I know some ones and they did like, nah, I'm good. They get stuck with a needle in their arm for IV, and so I know they'd have been like, nah, I love God, but I need this right here. So,
well, one of the things that folks don't know is that I had two wounds because I was on PD. They didn't remove my catheter until after the transplant, so they never sewed up that wound. So so I had the kidney wound on this side, and then my PD catheter wound right over top of my belly button. and all they would do is it heal naturally. So they would just pull these, like strips of dressing, and then just place it down and put tape over it, and stuff like that. But the reason my pastor did it was, one, here again, this was a revelation that he got from the Lord. Two, our church also does a recovery program for people that have had addictions. My pastor was very concerned that on the amount of medication that I'm on. I mean, because I'm on the hardest ones.
Yeah, you name like 4 heavy hitters:
morphine, fentanyl, Oxycontin, and Dilaudid.
Yeah, Dilaudid on its own is a
and the fentanyl on its own, right? I found out that I couldn't, like, it was literally making me sick. Like, I can't, as an example, 10 milligrams of Oxycontin will have me throwing up. I just literally couldn't take it. And then that's what had me fighting. Also, because I'm not used to pain medications like that. So, and because I have, I understand that there are no perfect people in this world. I understand that. And I want to make a point of clarification. I don't worship any human being.
Right.
But God will place an example around you. And I've seen the example in the leadership of my pastor. So though my pastor, doesn't know or has never experienced kidney disease, when he told me this, I really didn't, it was nothing to really think about.
Right.
I know he wasn't telling me this to say, hey, I need you to just go jump off the building. And he never did ask me how much pain I was in, because the Lord knew. And maybe it was a good thing that I was on these medications, because maybe if I was in my right mind, I would have been like, no. But I really didn't have any hesitation, didn't give no thought. I just asked my wife to explain what he meant. And she was like, I don't know. And I was like, okay, well, all right, I'm good.
Right.
and I did it. It wasn't easy. Lord knows it was not easy. But I did it. It's probably one of the hardest things I ever had to do in my life, was to tolerate that kind of pain.
Yeah.
And it was hard, very hard.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it was. When I had to have my emergency brain surgery, that was one of the worst pains I've had, and I've had who knows how many surgeries and procedures done. But just that headache that I had from that brain bleed was ridiculous, and I had one similar to that. Usually when I have a pain, the next time I have it is not even as bad as the first time I've had it, because I know 9 times out of 10 what it's from or what caused it, whatever. So a month before I had my brain surgery, I had a major seizure. At the time I was singing in a gospel group, and we were had rehearsal, and I was standing in the hallway getting ready to go into the sanctuary, and I remember our guitarist walked up to me, and he was like, hey, what's going on? And he put his fist out there like this, and I remember I put my fist out, but for some reason it yanked on its own in a different direction, and I was like, okay, well, what's going on here? And I'm like, all right. So I kind of like, you dust yourself off, tried it again, and the same thing happened. And as soon as that happened, I went into a seizure. And the thing about it, though, is that our guitarist was probably in his 70s. So he was like, he didn't know what was going on. He's freaking out. and I was able, before I went into a full seizure, I was able to tell them, get my mom, because my mom sung in the group as well, and I was like, I'm having a seizure. And I remember as soon as I said that, I flopped backwards and I hit my head on the ground. But I went out at the same time, so like I didn't feel that, you know. And I remember my mom being there and stuff. I woke up right before the ambulance got there and stuff, but um, I had, like I said, the brain surgery and stuff. That was a lot of pain. I had to have a procedure done where they stuck a needle in my head because it was swelling and it was, blood still building up there. Um, did that, and then the pain, going back to the pain thing, they had to take my staples out from my procedure right here.
Uh-huh.
And they waited like a day or two too long, and so it started healing around the staples.
Wow.
So as he's taking them out, he's like, jiggling and pulling, and I'm like, man, you need to figure out something how to get this out. I don't, so it's like, I understand the pain thing 100%. Like, you definitely are a fighter, because, like I said, I've been through some things. I've had the open wound thing when they took my drain out after my transplant. I don't know if they had one of those for you. But when they took that out, they didn't like stitch it up or anything. They just like put a gauze over it. I remember the doctor held his hand there for, like 10 minutes. I'm like, dude, you hurt me. And he's like, well, I got to stop the bleeding. I'm like, well, stop it a different way, because this is not working for me. So they, like you said, put that tape over the gauze and, went on about their business. They did the same thing for my PD catheter as well. And I'm like, this is not working, because this is painful. So to hear that you were able to actually obey God's word in that situation, and go forward with respect in the process, man, is unbelievable. Like I said, I've known some God fearing people that still would have been like, I love God, but I'm not. This is a bit too much for me. So to hear your story that way, man, is man, awesome. So I'm not gonna keep you long. I have one more question for you. If you could sum all this up, what would you want the audience, whether they're watching now, watching later, watching 5-10 years from now, what do you want them to take from your story today?
There are going to be some people that come into your life that will not understand your journey. They're not going to support your journey. They're not going to help you on your journey. They aren't going to think anything about your journey. But you know that you can't take this journey by yourself. If you have a relationship with your Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, it's not an easy thing to follow Jesus, but it's easy on the other side. You'll be in some tumultuous situations to where you don't know how you got out. You don't know how you were able to endure. And that's because you're not in this by yourself. You may not have any other folks around you, but there's always somebody there with you, because the Lord dwells within your heart when you walk with him. You will never walk alone. So no matter what's going on, no matter what kind of fears or anxiety or any type of trials or trepidations that you're going through right now, you need to just put that behind you and know that you're not in this by yourself. You always have your Lord and Savior with you, who's going to minister to you. And you have to learn how to respect the process. The process is, no matter how bleak your situation is, you need to speak life to yourself and not death. The process is, you need to strengthen your faith no matter what kind of rocky waters you're in. You have to remember that sometimes what you go through is not meant for you, but it's meant, God will use your situation to minister to other people. So you may have to endure some pains and trials just so that somebody else that may be close to you, that may not be walking with the Lord, can actually get it. When they see your process and they see everything that you're going through, it will literally heal them. So always respect the process, whatever you go to, no matter how bad it hurts, no matter whatever the situation, just glorify God in the process, because without Him, you cannot get through this. I could not heal myself on my own. I could not do surgery on myself. I could not guide myself through this process. I needed Jehovah Rapha, the Lord that heals me. I needed a rescuer. I needed a redeemer. I needed a savior. I needed my creator, the one that created me before I was born. God named me before I came into this world. That's who you need with you in order to get through any difficulties in your life. My story just happens to be one of the many stories in the Naked City. I'm an overcomer. I'm a wounded healer. I am a believer. And my God made me that way. And I pray that you have a relationship with God and you will see the same things that I have gone through happening in your life. And other than that, God bless everyone and just stay connected to Him.
Thank you, Dr. G. I appreciate you so much. We have heard a wonderful, powerful, dynamic story from this man of God right here. I hope that you took in everything that he was able to give you today, tonight, this evening, wherever you are in the world, and apply it to your life. Like you said, respect the process. Um, you know, make sure you put God number one in your life. Follow the path that He's laid out for you, and don't try to come up with your own plan. That's why I was, my saying is close to this one, which is trust the process, or trust His process, um, because He's already laid out your life for you. Like you said, like you were named before you were born. Your life is already, He's already seen it. He knows what's going on. He's the one who made it. So why not? He's not just going to put you in harm just because, unless it's needed for you to understand something. So trust in the Lord's process, and follow His path, because that's the only way that you're going to get to the good place that you are fighting and feel that you have a need to be in. So, again, Dr. G, I appreciate you so much. We will see you all next week, same time, same place, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. You guys have a wonderful night and a great week. God bless you and God keep you.
And thank you, man.
Thank you.
Good evening.